Right now, inside the Soba Realty Training Centre and out on a training pitch in Girona, Spain, something is shifting at Arsenal. Mikel Arteta has just stood in front of the club's own cameras and said 6 words that every single Arsenal supporter has been waiting to hear. He said, quote, "A lot is happening," end quote. Not a lot might happen. Not we are exploring options. He said it is happening, right now, today. That single sentence lands differently depending on who you are. If you are a supporter who watched Arsenal win the Premier League title last season and finished the Champions League campaign undefeated in 90 minutes, you hear those words as a promise. If you are a rival club, you hear them as a warning. And if you are Real Madrid, sitting on one of the most explosive attacking talents in world football, you might be hearing something else entirely, a knock on the door that will not stop. Because here is where things stand. Arsenal have already made moves this summer. They have already changed their front line. And now, with training camp underway and the season opener against Coventry City just weeks away, the club is signalling that the biggest decisions are still to come. So let us break down exactly what is confirmed, what is genuine interest, and what is still just noise. Because separating those 3 things is the only way to understand what Arsenal are actually building this summer. Here is what is actually at risk for Arsenal this summer, and it is bigger than most people are treating it. Arsenal are the reigning Premier League champions. They finished last season undefeated in 90 minutes in the Champions League. That is not a small achievement. That is a statement of intent from a club that spent years being the team chasing, rather than the team being chased. But titles do not defend themselves. Squads age, injuries hit, and rivals rebuild. Manchester City are entering a genuinely new era after the departure of Pep Guardiola, and that alone changes the entire competitive picture for next season. If Arsenal misjudge this transfer window, if they let the moment slip while City, Manchester United, Liverpool and Chelsea reshape themselves under new management, the title defence could be over before it starts. At the same time, Arsenal are already dealing with a serious blow. Their captain in defence, William Saliba, is facing a lengthy period on the sidelines with a back issue. That is not a minor knock. That is a first-choice centre-back, a player who represented France at a World Cup semi-final, suddenly unavailable heading into a season where Arsenal are expected to go back-to-back. If the club cannot solve that gap quickly, the entire defensive structure that won them the title last season is compromised from week 1. So the stakes are simple. Get the business right, and Arsenal walk into the new season stronger than the team that won the league. Get it wrong, misjudge the centre-back situation, misjudge the attacking additions, and the advantage built over the last year could evaporate fast. Before we go further, if you want the full picture on every one of these stories as they develop, this is exactly the channel for that. Hit that subscribe button if you want deep, honest analysis on Arsenal all summer long. No noise, no exaggeration, just what is actually happening and what it actually means. Now let us go through it properly, piece by piece. He confirmed business. Let us start with what is actually done, because this is the part people tend to skip past to get to the exciting rumours, and that is a mistake. The confirmed business tells you more about the club's actual strategy than any rumour ever will. Illan Meslier has arrived at Arsenal on a free transfer following the expiry of his contract at Leeds United. A free transfer for a goalkeeper of his profile is smart business, no fee, no risk, and it strengthens a goalkeeping department that already includes Tommy Setford and keeper Arrizabalaga. That is depth being built quietly, without fanfare, and it matters. Then there is the more significant move. Christos Tzolis has signed permanently from Club Brugge for a fee of £34 million. This is not a squad filler signing. Arteta himself has spoken about Tzolis in personal terms, thanking Leandro Trossard for what he called an incredible journey together at the club, while describing Tzolis as a talent and a personality that the club and its supporters are going to fall in love with very quickly. That is not the language a manager uses for a depth piece. That is the language used for a player being trusted to step into a real role in the squad immediately. And that leads us to the departure side of the ledger. Leandro Trossard has left the club. Arteta's tribute to him was warm and specific, calling him difficult to replace and pointing to the contribution and the moments shared together across his time at Arsenal. When a manager speaks about an outgoing player with that much detail and that much warmth, it tells you the exit was handled with respect, not friction. That matters for a football club because it protects the dressing room culture even as faces change. One more piece of confirmed business worth understanding, this time on the side of a move that did not happen. Arsenal were in the market for a forward and had interest in Morgan Rogers before he left Aston Villa in a switch to Chelsea worth £117 million. This tells you 2 things. First, Arsenal were active and looking in that forward market earlier in the window. Second, Chelsea were willing to go far higher than Arsenal to get their man. That is a useful data point for understanding just how competitive this specific transfer window has become among the top English clubs. So before we even touch the headline names, Arsenal have already reshaped their goalkeeping department, added a genuine talent in attack, said goodbye to a player who clearly meant a great deal to the squad, and shown they are willing to compete in the forward market even when they do not win every race. That is the foundation. Now let us get into where the real drama is. Martinelli's position. There has been a specific update on Gabriel Martinelli's situation, and it deserves proper attention because it tells you something important about the mood inside the squad. The update, credited to Sami Mokbel of the BBC, states that Martinelli is happy at Arsenal and will only consider leaving the club for an opportunity that specifically suits him. Here is my read on that. This is not a transfer story about Arsenal trying to sell him, and it is not a story about him pushing for an exit. This is closer to a statement of stability. Martinelli, a Brazilian international who represented his country at the World Cup this summer, is not agitating for a move. He is not unhappy. What this tells any club sniffing around him is that they would need to bring something genuinely exceptional to change his mind, not just a payday. For Arsenal, that is a quietly reassuring position to be in during a summer where so much attention is on who might be arriving. It means one fewer seat at the table is in doubt. It also matters in context of everything else happening in the forward line. With Trossard gone and Solis in, and with continued heavy interest in bringing in more attacking reinforcements, knowing that Martinelli is settled removes one variable from an otherwise very fluid picture. The Vinicius situation, now to the story dominating every conversation about Arsenal this week, Vinicius Jr. Let me be precise about where this stands because there are two very different signals here and viewers deserve to understand both rather than just the exciting one. The first signal, reported through Gary Cotterill, states plainly that Vinicius Jr. will be staying at Real Madrid beyond this summer. According to that update, Real Madrid have no intention of selling him and are confident he will agree a new contract, despite the interest from Arsenal. That is about as direct a denial as you will see in a transfer saga. Straight from a source close to the situation, no ambiguity, no hedging. Real Madrid do not want to sell and they believe a new deal gets done. But here is the second signal, and this one comes from Arteta's own press conference, plus wider reporting suggesting a move to Arsenal remains a possibility, with talks ongoing between the two clubs. So you have two threads pulling in opposite directions at almost the same moment. One says the door is closed. One says the door is still open and that Real Madrid may even be somewhat obliged to consider a sale depending on how the wider situation develops. What does that actually tell us as analysts rather than headline readers? It tells us this deal, if it happens at all, is genuinely live and genuinely contested. When a move is completely dead, reporting tends to go quiet. When it is completely done, reporting tends to converge. What we are seeing here is disagreement between sources close to the two clubs, which almost always means negotiations, positioning and posturing are happening behind the scenes in real time. Neither side has fully shown its hand yet. I want to be very clear with you as viewers here. This is currently a rumour, not a confirmed transfer. Vinicius Jr. remains a Real Madrid player. Arsenal have interest, talks are reported as ongoing, but nothing here should be treated as close to done. Treat every headline claiming certainty in either direction with caution until there is an actual official confirmation from either club. What we can say with confidence is what this interest represents for Arsenal strategically. Following a title win and an undefeated run through 90 minutes of Champions League football, the club is positioning itself to make a genuinely marquee signing rather than incremental additions. That ambition is not a rumour, that is visible in how the club is speaking publicly and in the calibre of player being linked. What Real Madrid's other move means for Arsenal. Here is a story that has almost nothing to do with Arsenal directly, and yet may end up mattering to Arsenal more than most of the transfer gossip involving their own name. Florentino Perez has now approved a Real Madrid pursuit of Manchester City's Rodri, with a willingness to pay somewhere in the region of £43 million. Rodri is currently stalling on a new contract at Manchester City, and reports suggest he wants the move to Real Madrid to happen. Now, why does this matter for Arsenal specifically? Because Manchester City have been the team standing between Arsenal and the title for the majority of the last 4 seasons. City have already lost serious leadership and quality from that dressing room, with Kevin De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan gone in recent years, and now Bernardo Silva and potentially Rodri following their long-serving manager out the door. Add in the departures of John Stones and Nathan Ake, both long-standing key players, and you start to see a squad losing an enormous amount of accumulated winning experience all at once. City do have an incoming replacement in Elliot Anderson, and reports suggest a player Arsenal themselves have tracked, Ayoub Bouadi from Lille, could also join Manchester City if Rodri's departure is finalised. So this is not a simple weakening story. City are also reinforcing. But there is a real argument that losing that much leadership and know-how in one transfer window, combined with adapting to a new head coach in Enzo Maresca, and his methods creates a period of adjustment for City, just as Arsenal look to build on what they achieved last season. I want to stress, this remains reported interest and an approved pursuit, not a completed transfer. Rodri is still a Manchester City player as things stand. But the fact that Real Madrid's ownership has now signed off on going after him tells you the move has moved from speculation into something with real financial weight behind it. For Arsenal, if this were to happen, the calculation is simple. Every rival that loses proven winning quality in the summer is a rival Arsenal do not have to face at full strength come August. The Saliba problem and the scramble for cover. Now we come to the part of the summer that is not about ambition, it is about necessity. William Saliba is facing a lengthy spell on the sidelines because of a back issue. Saliba represented France at this summer's World Cup, where they reached the semi-finals, and he would ordinarily have been among the last players back for pre-season under the usual late return schedule for players who go deep into major tournaments. Instead, his return has nothing to do with tournament football and everything to do with recovery from injury. This is the single most urgent problem on Arsenal's transfer list right now, more urgent in terms of timing than either Vinicius Jr. or Bruno Guimaraes, because it is a defensive gap that exists today, not a hypothetical upgrade for the future. There have been multiple signals about how Arsenal are responding to it. One update from Bruno Andrade speaking to ESPN Brazil states that while there is no confirmed name attached yet, someone close to the Bruno Guimaraes situation has indicated Arsenal are close to signing a centre-back to solve the issue created by Saliba's injury, and that this defensive deal is expected to be completed even faster than the Bruno Guimaraes transfer itself. The word used to describe the timeline was imminent. Separately, there has been a specific name linked to that need. Arsenal have made contact with Como over a possible move for Jacobo Ramon as part of their search for defensive cover following Saliba's injury. However, this one comes with real complications attached. Arsenal are reported to be concerned about a Real Madrid buyback clause written into the player's contract, and Como themselves are currently unwilling to sell him. So here is the honest picture on the centre-back situation. There is strong indication that a deal is close and moving fast, described as imminent by a source close to the wider Brazilian transfer situation. But the one specific name we have some visibility on, Jacobo Ramon, is currently blocked by two separate obstacles, a buyback clause that worries Arsenal, and a selling club that is not willing to do business right now. That tells me either Arsenal are working on a different centre-back target entirely that has not been named publicly yet, or they are still trying to find a way around the obstacles with Como specifically. Either way, given how urgent the Saliba situation is, expect this part of the story to move quickly in the coming days. Timber's return and the wider fitness picture. While the centre-back search continues, there has also been an important clarification about Jurrien Timber. The update, again through Sami Mokbel of the BBC, confirms that Timber travelled back to London from Arsenal's training camp in Spain for a pre-planned appointment connected to last season's groin injury. Crucially, sources insist there is no setback involved and that this visit is simply part of his existing rehabilitation schedule. Timber is set to rejoin the squad in Spain once that appointment is complete. This is a good example of why precision matters in transfer and injury reporting. On the surface, a defender leaving training camp during a week when the club is already dealing with a serious injury to Saliba could easily be spun into panic. But the actual detail here is reassuring. Timber underwent a minor operation this summer, and the club's medical team have been monitoring his recovery carefully, which is exactly why his long-standing issue kept him out for much of the run in last season, and why he is not being rushed back now. A pre-planned checkup as part of an existing recovery plan is a very different situation to a new injury, and it is worth being clear with you about that distinction rather than letting it blur into general injury anxiety around the squad. Putting Timber's situation next to Saliba's gives you the full defensive picture heading into the new season. One centre-back is out for a genuinely lengthy period and is the direct trigger for Arsenal's active search in the transfer market. The other is managing an existing recovery process carefully and is expected back in training in Spain without complication. Two very different stories that are easy to lump together if you are not paying close attention. The pre-season return schedule. Let us step back from the transfer noise for a moment and look at the bigger picture of how this Arsenal squad is actually coming back together, because it explains a lot about the timing of everything else we have discussed. Arsenal have already played one behind closed doors friendly, beating MK Dons 3-0 at their own training centre, with goals from Rice Nelson, Ethan Nwaneri and Sidak O'Neill. The squad is now in Girona for a training camp, with a fixture against the Spanish side scheduled for Saturday at 7 in the evening, British time. A large group is already out there with Arteta, including senior figures like Ben White, Ricardo Calafiori, Kai Havertz, Victor Gyökeres and Gabriel Jesus, alongside young players including Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Max Daumann. Some of that group, specifically Gyökeres, Havertz and the defender Piero Hincapié, arrived slightly later than the rest of the squad because they were representing Sweden, Germany and Ecuador respectively at the World Cup, all three eliminated in the round of 32. Joining very soon are Gabriel Magalhaes and Gabriel Martinelli, both part of Brazil's World Cup run, which ended in the round of 16 against Norway. Whether either features in the Girona fixture will depend on their physical condition after the tournament, with no decision made on that yet. After that, the return schedule spreads out over the following weeks. Captain Martin Odegaard, who helped Norway reach the World Cup quarter-finals, is expected back the week after Girona. The English contingent, Eberechi Eze, Noni Madueke, Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice, follow after that, having been involved right through to the tournament's final stages. It will be worth watching closely how much game time Saka and Rice are given in pre-season specifically, since both were managing injury issues throughout the World Cup itself. The very last group back will be Spain's World Cup winning trio, David Raya, Mikel Merino and Martin Zubimendi. And under normal circumstances, William Saliba would have been part of that later returning group as well, having represented France through to the semi-finals. Instead, because of his back issue, his return is now governed entirely by medical recovery rather than the football calendar. For context, here is the full run of fixtures ahead. Girona away on Saturday the 1st of August. Real Betis at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin on Wednesday the 5th of August. Borussia Dortmund at home on Sunday the 9th of August as part of the Emirates Cup. Como 1907 at home on Wednesday the 12th of August. Manchester City at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff on Sunday the 16th of August for the Community Shield. And then the real business begins. Coventry City at home on Friday the 21st of August, the opening match of the Premier League season. That schedule matters because it puts a hard deadline on everything we have discussed today. Whatever happens with Vinicius Jr., whatever happens with the search for defensive cover, whatever happens with Bruno Guimaraes, all of it needs to be resolved, in some form, before that Coventry City kick-off on the 21st of August. Arteta's phrase, that a lot is happening and that things will soon be put in a very concrete way, suddenly makes a lot more sense once you see how little time is actually left on the calendar. So let us bring all of this together. Confirmed and done, Illan Meslier and Christos Tsolis are Arsenal players. Leandro Trossard has departed with the club's genuine gratitude. Arsenal missed out on Morgan Rogers, who instead completed a big money move to Chelsea. Genuinely live situation still being negotiated. The pursuit of a centre-back to cover William Saliba's injury, described by one source as imminent and moving faster than the Bruno Guimaraes deal, even though the specific target in Jacobo Ramon currently faces real obstacles. The continued interest in Bruno Guimaraes himself. And the biggest name of all, Vinicius Jr., where talks are reported as ongoing even as a separate report insists Real Madrid intend to keep him and get him signed to a new contract. Reassuring updates rather than transfer stories, Gabriel Martinelli's contentment at the club, and Jurrien Timber's rehabilitation proceeding exactly as planned with no setback. And developing outside the club entirely but relevant to Arsenal's title defence, Real Madrid's approved pursuit of Rodri, a move that, if completed, would strip Manchester City of yet another proven winner, just as Arsenal look to go back-to-back as champions. What Arteta said in that press conference was not empty. Every thread we have gone through today backs up the idea that the club knows exactly what it wants to add, exactly where the gaps are, and is working through a genuinely packed list of priorities with a real deadline bearing down on them. The next 3 weeks are going to define what kind of squad Arsenal take into their title defence. I will be tracking every one of these stories as they move, the centre-back search, the Vinicius situation, and everything in between. If you want to stay ahead of it rather than catching up after the headlines break, make sure you are subscribed, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.